atheism is it's defined as the negative response to the assertion that one or more gods exist, right? And herein lies the problem. It's not in that lies the problem, and I've said this many times, but I think it should get cleared up. If you look at the Christian countries of the world, right? Western Europe, or I should say basically almost all of Europe, North America, at least United States, Canada, Brazil, Argentina, they all are secular. America is really the only one that can said to be an actual secular country, even though we have God. It's not atheistic; it's secular. And the Christian countries around the world are absolutely they're functionally secular, even though they all have mentions of God and Christ and stuff in their charters and constitutions. And they're basically the only secular countries. The officially atheistic countries wind up with mass slaughter. And whenever atheists organize, or there tries to be anti-clericalism, because it's a negative, and because it takes the view that religion is poisonous, and usually it's gone after Christianity the most, and particularly Roman Catholicism. In some cases, in some periods, Eastern Orthodoxy has been the main target. But if you look at the Mexican government, basically the wholesale slaughter of people from 1900 to 1933, well, past till 1945, just kicking open church doors and just massacring people en masse. And you look at just in the 20th century alone, just the massive hundreds of millions of people that had died at the hands of anti-clericalists, right? And it's not just communists. You had, before that, you had the French Revolution. You had Mexico from 1900 to 1925, and then you had rise up again under Calles in the Cristero Wars, or La Cruzada. You had it in El Salvador in the 1980s. Why is that? Why atheism gets fucked up whenever anybody tries to unite behind it. Why? Because it's just the negative of, does it got it? No. So there has to be other things attached to it, like communism, or like what we see with atheism plus, right? And people go, wait a minute, that's not the logical conclusion to atheism, because there's not. There does run into problems when people say, well, they talk about common human decency, right? And they don't realize that our morality and everything about us in the Western world, and now the global world, springs from the base of Christian society. That's where humanism and all this other stuff come from. The idea of basic inalienable rights. That cannot be drawn from God-given rights. Immutable rights. That cannot be drawn from atheism. That came from the idea of these are God-given rights. There's, the image of God in man, These are the things that ended slavery. And I can debate anybody all day about people saying, oh, things were used to justify slavery, even though Christianity ended slavery 3 times, and it really only emerged with Protestantism, which is a form of anti-clericalism. But this is what fucks everything up, and this is why people get worried when there's talk of anti-clericalism or anti-religionism or pro-atheism, because we see atheism rise up again, like this after Atheism Plus, so with this street epistemology and all these atheist YouTube channels that just voraciously attack religion, right? Not just religion, but religious people, viciously. And some of them used to be religious. Oh, I used to be a Catholic, and then they call Catholics or Protestants or Jews motherfuckers and bitches and idiots, and claim that the Christians were anti-science, and it's like, no, and that never happened. Religion isn't anti-science. Religion isn't, you know, a lot of these things that it's claimed, and it's that it's forcing a negative, and then it adds a bunch of shit on, and then it feels like, oh, well, we're under attack. The idea that there is not one or more gods exist is not under, it can be disagreed with, but it can't be fought, right? You can, you know, only on the battlefield of ideas, right? And the people who fuck up the most, the idea of people saying, of wanting to accept the label of being an atheist, are the Atheism Plus, were and are the communists, are the street epistemology people, because for years we've all heard, and I've said this too, you know, you can believe whatever you want, just fucking don't keep knocking on my door, don't push it in my face. You know, I was sitting down at Panera Bread eating one time, and this dude came up and sat next to me. I thought he was hitting on me. I was flattered until he started talking about Jesus and stuff. And now, the exact shit that the atheists, many of these atheists, not all, say is terrible about religion, and you see them mirroring it, you know, as if atheism has to be a religion now. That's what gets me. The apathetic atheist, people say, oh, I just don't believe in a God. Yeah, I still put up a Christmas tree, put up Christmas lights, say Merry Christmas. And, oh yeah, that cathedral is beautiful, and that Hindu temple is beautiful, and it's fine architecture. Those people are the sane ones, just like the people who religion is a thing for them. It's not a frantic political cause. Then you run into atheists who say, well, we should bulldoze all the fucking cemeteries. We should tear down these churches. Why don't they strip the gold out of that church and give it to the poor? And yet, I don't know if you know this, if you ever work for charitable organizations, when you give your money to a charitable organization, even if that's Catholic Charities or not, when you actually go to the ground level, they're Protestants and Catholics that are doing that are actually doing the work and getting the stuff done, even when you give to Amnesty International and stuff like that. Well, no, I'm talking about Doctors Without Borders. Sorry, I misspoke there. But it's like they don't know that. Or it's very one-sided, like the idea of rational thought and skepticism and secularism, like these, they push for this shit, and then you run into people like Steve Shives, Cult of Dusty, Bionic Dance, and they don't realize it's not a belief in God or a religious tradition that makes people intractable. In fact, that many times loosens people up because they're not allowed to be as hateful or judgmental, and they have to try to be compassionate. But they get these ideas in their head that are just as dogmatic and basically inform more of their life than a religion would. Like this militant form of feminism, or the street epistemology, hell, even objectivism, that Ayn Rand garbage. But at least with Ayn Rand's nonsense, it already has it has a framework to it, unlike basically the Communist Manifesto, which is more ridiculous than any religious book I've ever read. Yeah, I mean, or what is feminism? Well, it's whatever the authorities say it is, and we're going to tell a man that he's oppressing a woman by holding a door for her, which is what I was told in sociology class years ago. But yet, women getting beaten by their husbands and forced to wear a hijab in Islamic countries, you can't say anything about that because that's racist and sexist because of intersectional feminism. And they wind up disappearing up their own ass, and you can't call their bluff, right? And there's no orthopraxis, forgive the term, for any of these movements that say they're based on atheism. So that's my spiel. And it's the reason why I think people should think of that when they say, but atheism isn't, you know, they're not bad people because they're atheists, or they're not murdering people because they're atheists. In many, many instances, it's because they are, or because they have a fierce hatred of religion. And you can't just hate religion, you have to hate the religious behind it. And when can atheists finally admit, and some do, many do, that a shitload of times that ended up with church doors getting kicked in and machine guns getting opened up on men, women, and children. And it wasn't just the communists. Again, the Mexican government, which is still heavily anti-Catholic today, but they just realized they can't enforce it. Look at the beginning part of the 20th century, Mexico and the Roman Catholic Church, or any sign of religion, just massacring people. But yeah, the French Revolution, the Paris Commune. I mean, we could just keep going. And then they think like, well, why would anybody be against